Hello, everyone, and welcome to Financial Autonomy for Women, the podcast. My name is Maureen Paley. I'm your host. I'm so thrilled to be your host. I am a financial coach, life coach, and career coach. I work exclusively with women and those individuals that have received the gendered conditioning that typically comes with being assigned the female sex at birth. In this podcast, we're going to talk about all things finances. Sometimes we're going to get into emotions. Other times we're going to get into behaviors and behavior change. Other times we're going to get into motivation. And my goal here is to really help you learn and understand financial concepts that may have been overwhelming, may have brought on anxiety in the past, or may have been something that you just kind of pushed to the side because you just weren't able to deal with it in the moment. We're going to talk about all the ways that we engage with money so that we can step into a place of choice and decision making that we feel good about when we engage with our money in those 7 ways. So today is episode 2, and I'm so excited to bring you this episode. Episode's 2 title is Go Ahead and Buy the Latte. Debunking the money lies we were told. So let me start by asking you this question. Have you ever heard the going wisdom, the general wisdom of don't buy your coffee at Starbucks, don't buy your coffee at a coffee shop, certainly don't do it every day, make it at home instead so you save money, right? That's a very common, also kind of tropey thing that we hear about spending and how to cut back on certain areas of spending. This can absolutely be true for a lot of people. I do think that there's a little bit too much emphasis on maybe fully abstaining from this type of purchase or from, I think there's a little too much shame going there, to be honest. It's kind of like, oh, you shouldn't do that. If you really cared about your money, you wouldn't do that, and so on and so forth. So a lot of times the going wisdom around finances kind of slides into those areas of, being kind of tropey and overused and being kind of shaming. So I really want to take a look at what the break down that advice today and other bits of money, so-called wisdom that we've absorbed over time, and get under the hood and see what's really going on, right? Because if we are financially autonomous, we are the captains of our ship. So if I want to go buy a latte at a coffee shop, I'll go buy a latte at a coffee shop. I can buy actually whatever I want to buy. We're going to talk about how we can step into decision making for our individual financial situations that see that wisdom for what it is and also understand what we need in our financial world, right? So this is like, you don't necessarily have to follow this wisdom. If you follow it, that's totally fine. That's great. That's something that works for you. Not everything is going to work for everyone, especially when it comes to financial advice, best practices, tools, etc. So what I like to remind my clients of and anybody who's listening, we're going to talk about some things today that you might think, no, that definitely doesn't work for me. You might say, oh, you know what? That's a good idea. Let me try that. I am always encouraging clients to try things. I think the worst thing we can do is not try things, right? Not do the work, not run the experiments for how do I tap the brakes on my spending if I'm feeling the pinch in my budget? How do I get aligned with my values and see that my money is going out into the world aligned with my values so that I can feel good about how my money is going out into the world? And maybe that's buying a latte. Maybe that's buying a latte every day. Maybe that's buying a latte for me and my friend. I don't know. So I want to make sure that we take this advice, which I do think has been overused and overstressed and maybe kind of can get us into this shame zone, right? And shaming doesn't do us any good when it comes to us wanting to change behaviors or wanting to make decisions, right? If you think about it, shame, your nervous system reacts to when you're in shame, right? You're constricted and you're not comfortable. You're missing out on those beneficial brain chemicals and chemistry that come with feeling more relaxed, feeling accepted, feeling at ease, right? And this is why I practice what I call no shame coaching, because shaming someone for the decisions that they made is actually just makes everything harder for them. You know what I mean? Like, why poison the water here when someone's trying to investigate, accept, and investigate their current behaviors and make a change for something else, right? It's really counterproductive. So today that's what we're going to talk about. This lines up with the way that we engage with money. Remember those 7 ways: earning, spending, saving, investing, borrowing, giving, and manifesting, right? This lines up the most with spending. And I think it's also going to line up with, some of these just have a knock on domino effect. It's also going to line up with how we save, how we invest, so on and so forth. So, this advice, I want to tell you a little bit about my history with this advice. When I was about 23 years old, I had my first, real job out of college. I was teaching at a Catholic high school in Pennsylvania. I was not certificated as a teacher, but I found myself teaching high school English. And I had an opportunity. There was like a district in service day where the teachers had to go down to like the central office, and there were several group meetings that we had, and then also we can attend different panels that we might be interested in. So I saw something on the agenda called the latte factor. And I was like, what the heck is this? The latte factor. So I went, and it was a woman from a financial advisory group. I can't remember which one, but she was in business as a financial advisor. So she wanted to share this idea of the latte factor. So if you haven't heard it, it's fairly straightforward. So the idea is if you go out every day to Starbucks, let's say, and you get yourself a latte, which are probably like 6, $7, depending on what you add and what you subtract, right? If you do that, instead of doing that, if you made your coffee at home for much less, you took that money that you would otherwise be spending on your lattes and you invested it and harnessed the power of compound returns over the long term, you would be able to build wealth, right? So she showed us lots of graphs, lots of charts that it really is the proof in the pudding for. Here's the thing. It's the proof in the pudding for the magic of compound returns, right? And it makes sense for a financial advisor to kind of dish this out to an audience because it gets them like, ooh, they got a little taster of like, wow, that can really happen, right? So I think what happens with advice like this, like, don't go out for coffee, make it at home. Don't buy those handbags that you want. And especially this could be very gendered focused and very gendered stereotyped, right? Stereotypical, women in their handbags, women in their shoes, so on and so forth, right? We can probably name a laundry list of things. I know plenty of women that love to spend money on their cars while I don't, so it's like we can insert vice or insert stereotypical thing and you can come to the same argument. But I think what I learned as a participant in that segment of the day was, okay, there's this thing called compounding returns. And as a 23-year-old, oof, I did not have the presence of mind, nor did I have the maturity at that point to say, ooh, I am really gonna like step into this and run with this. I think for me, that day a seed was planted about, hey, there's things that you can do with your money outside of earning it and getting a paycheck that hits your checking account and then spending it on what you want to do, right? Like going out with friends, buying the Starbucks, taking a weekend trip, so on and so forth. It got me, I think at least it planted a seed that there are other money goals that I can put my money to work towards. Now, fast forward so many years later, I'm, a financial coach and counselor. I've been working with people formally, I guess, on their finances since 2018, 2017, 2018. The majority of these folks, women. And I think we're all kind of tired of hearing the don't go out for coffee, so on and so forth. So I want to make sure that, and for me, in the spirit of financial autonomy, if going out for coffee provides you something more than just a cup of coffee, right? It provides you maybe an experience. It provides you an environment of comfort and relaxation. It provides you moments in a busy day that are just for you, there's reasons to think maybe this is something I need to hang on to, right? And again, everybody's financial situation is unique. So please, please consider that, right? This may not apply for you, but if you're someone who's like, who's in a behavior, in this case, a spending behavior that helps you feel good, it's important to do some reflection on that, right? It's okay to spend and feel good. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So let's just debunk that money lie for a second. Spending is not a bad thing to do. I would argue that if you didn't spend at all you did was save, that would be very problematic as well, right? So for me, I know that one of my values, one of my core values is balance. So I'm always looking for a balance of when I'm spending, when I'm not spending, all the ways that I give my money a job across those 7 ways that I engage with money. I'm looking to strike a balance that I feel really good about. And when I get out of balance, that's when I get uncomfortable. And that's when I get anxious, scared, nervous, and I have to kind of scramble to get to a safer zone, right? So in this area, we might want to go, you may not need to, nor want to completely abstain from buying your latte or from booking that massage or from making that purchase on something that's beautiful that you love, a piece of art, a handbag, your grooming, things like that. Those are very easily shamed places where we can get into a feeling of shame, I think, about like, oh, this is selfish to go ahead and do this. This is, oh, just very self serving and so on and so forth. Our money goes out into the world in ways that we feel are going to help us, right? And it's okay if one of these ways helps you meet a certain need, right? And that could be a psychological need, it could be an emotional need, it could be a mental health need. So, let's just kind of break down the shame factor there, okay? Spending isn't shameful, spending on certain things isn't shameful, so on and so forth. Let's step aside and take a look at the reality of limits. If I am someone with a full-time day job, I know how much I'm going to get paid every 2 weeks. So that's the income coming in. It's a limited amount of income. If it's just my full-time job, I don't have any side gigs, side hustles, ways to like boost that income, right? It's not variable, it's just fixed. That has a limit on it. There's only so much income for the month of June, right? And then my expenses, my income needs to cover the expenses, right? The big ones are the roof over your head, the food in your belly, those things those are your survival needs, right? And the rest are usually variable or optional. But those expenses, the income is pretty defined and it's pretty fixed and limited. So we've got to find ways to make sure that that income can pay for all those expenses. And if we just keep piling on expenses, we will eventually hit a limit. You stretch a rubber band to a point and it's going to break, right? This is just kind of the law of the universe and the law of physics. Some things are limited. It's okay. So spending is not the problem, and nor are these limits. But I think what happens is when we come up against I'm hitting my limits and it's getting uncomfortable and it almost feels like shame is a prerequisite to get me motivated to be less uncomfortable. That's when we get into the lies and the shaming that we're told about money. So that's part of what I want to debunk here, right? So we've already covered a couple things. We've talked about the latte factor. We've talked about how that applies to spending. And also let's debunk that spending is a bad thing. Spending is necessary to support ourselves. We get to impact our economy. We get to send our money out in the world in a way that's meaningful for us. Now, sometimes in spending, we can also run on autopilot habits. We're out there spending and spending and spending and spending. And when we can take a look at the reality of the limits of the income we receive, being able to cover the expenses in our lives, then we can have a, a good fertile ground for like an awakening or some insights. When I start to see that my income can only cover so many expenses until I'm really uncomfortable, then that can be a self motivating factor to change behavior, change the expenses that that income covers. So, and to do that, that's math. That's really just working the numbers and it's decision making. Does shame come up in that whole recipe? Absolutely, it does, right? And that's part of the conditioning that we've received around money and about, having to bootstrap our way into whatever, success, right? So the good news is, in order to make the changes and to see things clearly, shame is not a prerequisite. That said, if shame comes up, you can still coexist with shame coming up and still work toward behavior change if that's what you decide to do. So, yeah, I want to kind of just get some air into that money lie and kind of money stereotyping for folks receiving that gendered conditioning that comes with being a woman, and open that up a little bit. So, back to this whole idea of the latte factor. What the latte factor was really trying to drive home was the power of compounding returns. You can call it compounding interest, compounding returns. Same thing in the investing world, essentially. So it was trying to show that if we purposefully, slowly, over the long term, and consistently take some of that income that's fixed, that's coming in, and assign it to an objective like investing, it's that assignment of the money to that area, another way we engage with money in the world, investing, that allows us the opportunity to participate in growth of what we eventually called capital, which equals wealth, which equals assets. When I take my limited income and I direct it to a latte, I have my latte and that's that, right? That's all that's that. When I take a certain amount of money and I direct it towards an investment, I get to participate in the possibility that that money will grow. And then when that money grows, the growth of that money can actually make money as well, right? So that's what it was trying to provide was a gateway into, hey, this is another thing you can do with your money. And I don't know about you, but I like the idea of, oh, my money can grow, my money can make some money, and then the money that made some money can also the money I made can also make more money. So that, and part of, for me, it took a little bit of growing older and seeing things a little bit differently, reshaping my priorities and getting in touch with my values. That's what gets me a little bit more excited. So let's think about that in regards to some of these ways to that we could potentially change our spending, right? The advice that we receive, I think, as women is a bit different from what men receive around spending, around money, around investing, so on and so forth. A research study by giftcards.com found that when parents teach their children about money, they tend to teach boys about wealth and they tend to teach girls about restraint. So, you could also think about it like this. Young children that are assigned the male sex at birth and are raised in that conditioning, they are given probably more permission, more autonomy to take risks and to see themselves as wealth builders, right? And then if you look at the other side of the binary and you look at children who were assigned the female sex at birth and received that gender conditioning as children, they weren't given that same horizon of possibilities. It wasn't go take risks. It was restrain yourself. It wasn't go build wealth. It was, oh, you've gotta maybe save or do something different. Pull back, not go all out. Instead, pull back. So this could explain why risk tolerances tend to be different between those who identify as men and those who identify as women, right? Women generally are not as risk tolerant as men. However, women also, their decision making differs from a man's decision making. So it may not be that so much that are unwilling to take on risk, but they have a different process of assessing the risks and making the decisions, their next best decisions, than men do. So, what have we worked on so far? We've talked about the lies that we've been told around money and how they can easily get us into like a gendered, stereotypical shame place, right? We talked about the fact that spending is not bad. Spending is just spending. We also talked about limits that, if I'm someone who has limited income, which most of us do, right? There's only so many expenses that limited income can cover. So if we are someone who is in the place of, hey, my income, I'm trying to cover a lot more expenses than my income will allow. That's the rubber band stretching and stretching and stretching to its max. It's gonna snap, right? So if you are in that place, good news, shame is not a prerequisite to get out of that place. What could be a good step to get out of that place is, first of all, recognizing that you're there. Either the rubber band is about to snap or it has snapped. Being honest about that. Okay, I'm in this place. The income that I have is not covering the expenses that I have. I need to take a deeper look at this. Another way to work with that and to kind of get inside and under the hood of that situation to a place where you start believing some of this behavior change, the spending behavior change, might be possible for you, right? Because changing behaviors is probably one of the hardest things that we do as humans. And it's part of, like, honestly, what fascinates me as a coach. And I consider it a privilege to be with people who are considering behavior change of any kind, really. Because it's taking a risk. It's stepping out of where we're at now, what's not working, and it's stepping into a new way of doing things. And that's basically stepping into the unknown. So one of the ways that we can get under the hood inside ourselves to get to a place that's fertile ground for motivation and like finding the glue to make the behavior finally stick. One way we can do that is exploring our values. And that gets me back to the earlier conversation around going out and buying a latte. If a latte provides you a break in the action of an extremely busy day where you are meeting everybody else's needs and you are finally allowed to just focus on yourself for 20 minutes when you go out and buy that latte and enjoy it, understanding that is going to help you see the needs that you need to meet internally. You need some time for yourself where you're not giving and giving and giving. You need some time. If this is you, you need some time stepping back and giving to yourself, right? Now, there could be other reasons why you go buy the latte or the what have you, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be that, but doing some exploration around the needs that actually get filled with that spending choice is going to help you see it's like, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm weak and because I just can't get my shit together. I'm doing this because I have a genuine need that needs to be met. And then you can start strategizing the decisions or even spending more time reflecting on ways that you can get those needs met. It might be still going to buy the latte. It might be still going by to buy the latte and setting some really good boundaries with people around you, right? Usually, money behaviors and decisions aren't purely about the money. They're about our values and a deeper internal need that needs to be met. So, values, getting in touch with your values and understanding how your values drive your decisions and your behaviors is a great way to be like an internal detective looking under the hood of maybe the why. Why are you making the financial decisions and engaging with money in the ways that you are, right? Why you might be running up against those limits. And if you are running up against the limits, you also have a choice. You can continue to run up against the limits. You can continue, the results that you're getting, the results that you're getting right now. If you want different results, so you're going from where you are right now to where you want to be, something's got to happen in between. There's got to be a change. There's got to be steps. There's got to be action. So then it's just a matter of let me determine what this action is. Okay. Then when you determine what the action is, you get to run the experiment. I'm going to change this behavior for the next week, 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks, whatever it is. And I'm going to see what happens. Here's the thing. Nothing is set in stone. You can always change. If you're finding that it's not working for you, whatever type of financial decision or financial behavior change you make, you can always modify it. I mean, I think that's how we refine and that's how we get to a sweet spot where we are feeling strong, at ease, and have that peace of mind that the ways that we're engaging with money are balanced and working for us, right? I'm the captain of my ship. Is this working for me? You get to decide that. So I hope that you enjoyed this conversation today. I'm really excited to bring you more conversations about all things finances and all things related to the gendered conditioning that we receive for individuals born assigned the female sex and those who identify as women. So, lots more to come in future episodes. I'm going to have several great interviews coming up, one being with Rose Cabral, activist realtor in Sacramento. We're going to talk about home ownership. We're going to talk about is it right for everyone? Who is it right for? How possible is it really? Because a lot of us think it's not possible. It might be more possible than you think. And I'm also going to talk with other financial professionals that can help us understand these ways we engage with money and how we can feel that clarity, confidence, peace of mind, and be the captain of our financial ships. So, thank you so much for listening. Share this podcast. Please review it. Reach out to me with any questions that you have. I'd love to hear your ideas for what you'd like to see on the podcast. And as always with finances, be kind to yourself, seek support when you need it, and let me know how it goes. Take care.